Patrick Roth, Senior Support Technician for E1 Business Solutions. Ran across something interesting the other day. User was modifying map. They were just tweaking one of the settings, and then they ran the map, and then they got this error. Procedure function taAnalyticsDistribution expects parameter IB document number, which was not supplied. Now, the error itself is not horribly uncommon. You'll see this in SmartConnect/eConnect fairly often. And the reason why it is because the data that's being passed here is blank, and the parameter of whichever one is complaining is expecting a non-empty value, or I should say not even empty, but not passed value. And this can happen because, one, the data is not mapped, which usually isn't the case, because usually fields that throw this error are required fields, or oftentimes that the source data in the source file or a calculation or whatever is a map. Now, what surprised the user in this case was I'm not using analytics, which would be the GPAA module. I'm not using it. So why am I getting this error? And to see that, let's take a look at the map behind it and see why that would be. Now, if we look at this SOP map, I'll just pull up this create update item, which is not being used now. If we look at this map, as I noted, required fields, which are denoted as red, show up as required. This comes straight from the Microsoft eConnect SDK documentation. And so in node maintenance, so they are marked as required. You can mark an unmarked field. So if, for example, if we wanted to make class ID required, we could just change node maintenance, and now 100% the UI will make us do this. So if I pull up this mapping and I decide I don't want to map it, I might press OK. But if I do, I get an error, parameter item number is required. And that in this case is because item number is required, and indeed I do not have any map to it. The correct way to do this in this case, if we didn't want to map anything, we didn't want to make any changes, we'd hit cancel. So how did we end up getting that? So if we look at the mappings on the node, indeed, the analytics distribution node does show as mapped. And why would that be? How do we get ourselves in this situation? Well, the interesting thing about this node is that we notice immediately that there are no required fields marked on this map. Unlike the other one, which did have just the one required field, this one doesn't have any. And that's a little odd, because usually you would think there would be at least one required field for a mapping. But in the case of the AA node, because the AA node is used for all the GP modules, so you got RM, PM, SOP, GL, and depending on what we're doing, different things are required, and so you can't make all the things required, because then if I'm not doing a journal entry, for example, then I don't need different values, and so none of them are shown required. But in the end, depending on what we're doing, they may or may not be. You just can't see it from the UI. So what that means, though, is if I pull up this node, perhaps accidentally, and I press OK to get out, we'll notice it doesn't throw an error. And again, the reason that happens is because there's no required fields. So you would think perhaps that you wouldn't get the error, because since I didn't map anything, but you kind of do have that out of the box. Almost all the GP nodes have an update if exists flag. And so in this particular case, this is one of the parameters, just the same as this doc number, note text. These are the same kind of parameter. This one we just auto default for you. In this case, we'll update if exists as false, meaning if there's a duplicate, throw an error. And so this counts as a valid mapping. If this was unmapped, I suspect we would not have it happen. We wouldn't see any mapping, the node would be empty, and we wouldn't throw the error. So in this case, again, if I click OK, that happens. So the easy way to fix this from a eConnect standpoint then is just delete this mapping. So if we click the analytics distribution node and then delete mapping button, we'll notice that indeed is no longer mapped. And if I run this map again, it runs without errors.